begun, continued, and ended in thee, we may glorify thy holy name, and finally by thy mercy attain everlasting life. These words you just led us in the daily prayer that begins each proceeding. Mr. Speaker, though sometimes the routine of a prayer can rob it of its petition or its aspiration, but not today, Mr. Speaker. For in that prayer, in those words, rests the hope we have for the family of our friend Roger Parent, MLA for Saskatoon Meewasin. That last evening when he passed away was not the end. For his family gathered in this house today, this legislative family, it is where our hope rests too. Before I go on, I want to thank the Honourable, the Leader of the Opposition. He came to my office this morning to extend condolences on behalf of his team to me, for my team, for this team, for Roger's team. That was appreciated, and we're also wanting to say thank you to the Leader of the Opposition and the caucus opposite for their cooperation in allowing for this tribute. There are many titles represented in this venerable chamber. Yours is quite a title, Mr. Speaker. The Leader of the Opposition, Premier, Ministers of the Crown, Whips, House Leaders, all impressive as titles go, perhaps. But none as great and none as honorable as those few among us who can honestly and credibly be called constituency men or constituency women. Roger Parent was a constituency man. He worked hard to serve and to represent the people that sent him here. He never forgot the people that sent him here. Most discussions I had with Roger would involve him saying something like, "You know what I'm hearing?" Or, "My people are saying," and when Roger said that to you, you knew that that was exactly the case because he would have just been talking to them. He would have been door knocking. He would have seen them about the community. He would have been returning phone calls, and he would then be, in those conversations, giving voice to his constituents. And then he would advocate for them, sometimes for their individual plight or their individual case, and sometimes on broader policy matters that he believed might uplift the station of the people that he called his constituents. He was a constituency man who was very proud of the diversity of his constituency. Members on both sides of the House will know that that part of Saskatoon, like other parts of our major cities, there are so many newcomers that have moved there. And in his very first speech in this House, it was the 6th of December 2011, he talked about those newcomers. He talked about people on his campaign team that actually would help him to communicate. He told me that on many occasions he knew he was talking to potential voters, but folks who couldn't vote at that particular time, but he wanted to hear from them. And he wanted to hear their concerns. You can judge a lot about an individual, you can judge a lot about a candidate by the people that are attracted around that individual to help in some effort, like a campaign, especially when they're all volunteers. When dozens of them, in Roger's case, wanted to give of the most precious thing they have, their time, to do not so fun things like door knocking or cold calling or organizing campaign events. But Roger had a force with him. They knew him best. Many of them knew every side of him, more sides than some of us knew. But they gave of their time. They wanted to volunteer. They wanted to send him to Regina. They believed he would be their voice, and he was. In that same maiden speech, Mr. Speaker, Roger names that core of volunteers. Named them all. I counted 91. Imagine that calculation. He's giving his maiden speech in this House, and we all know, we've all done it, it's a bit of a nervous moment. We don't know if it'll be too long or what we should put in or what we should leave out, and he decided that every person that was at the core of that campaign that volunteered their time owed the respect and his gratitude to have their name read into the public record, into the Hansard. He was a constituency man who found all of the challenge and all of the honor that any of us might seek from our vocation in the job that he had earned. In my one-on-one meetings with Roger, we would canvass what his aspirations were. I'd ask him, what is it that you want to, what else might he want to do in politics? And he said, well, I'll do whatever I'm asked. But he said, I'm happy being an MLA. He said to me, and I remember, he said, it is an honor to be an MLA. You know, that's a rare thing in politics today. I was surprised to hear it the first time. He said it subsequently to me that when we had other meetings, and I shouldn't have been surprised that that was what he wanted to do, because he worked so hard to do it. He ran 4 times, twice unsuccessfully, the last one very, very close, and some would have at that point been discouraged and probably decided to do something else, but he kept at it, battling in a contested nomination and then winning the seat and then winning again. He was a constituency man. But he brought a provincial perspective as well. His priority was an economic one. He believed, I talked to him about this, he believed that we really did need to focus on the economy, that that was the best way to ensure long-term quality of life for not just his constituents, but people around Saskatchewan. In that same maiden speech, in December of 2011, he offered a series of touchstones to his vision, but the very first one he mentioned is that his objective, his goal, his vision was that this province would be a province of 1.1 million people by 2015, and I am glad he lived to see it. In recent years, his focus, as has been the focus of other members, including members opposite, has been on the issue of procurement. He believed in free trade, he believed in open procurement, but he also believed that it should be fair. And he had concerns that that wasn't necessarily happening based on maybe treatment that other companies from outside the province would get from their home jurisdiction, or just generally about the procurement policy. And he would talk to us in the front row, in any row. He would talk to me about it. And today in government, we actually have an office that the Attorney General is responsible for called Priority Saskatchewan, whose job it is to respond to those concerns, not just from Roger, from others, but boy, we heard a lot from him on the matter. Their job is to work with government on procurement and also for businesses here so we can ensure a level playing field. And I promise you this, Mr. Speaker, Priority Saskatchewan would not exist in the province today, neither would even its objectives be as focused, I don't believe, were it not for the work of Roger Parent. Roger had a good sense of humor. The Deputy Premier, as he's wont to do, sometimes asks random questions, and he told me today that he asked Roger once, why don't you just go by Roger Perron? And Roger said, well, because then people would speak French to me, and I don't know French. And furthermore, he said, I have no interest in being a federal judge. Before politics, Roger used his skills and his training as an economic development professional, and I was in the economic development profession at the time. He was involved in the Saskatchewan Economic Developers Association, and I was too, not as involved as he, but his priority was Aboriginal economic development. He was proud of his Métis heritage, and he was determined to be a part of uplifting all people through opportunity. Roger was a constituency man, but he had his other passions, as we all do. He loved to hunt. He loved to golf. He was a left-hander like I am, but that's where the similarities ended because Roger was good. He was also pretty good at swinging a hammer. He was very good at home improvement. He shared projects with me, and this was a passion of his. But here lately, seeing him beam about his grandson Nash betrayed the fact that there was a new passion, a greater passion. Nash is the son of his daughter Shania and her husband Kyle. And those of us who have worked alongside him and those who knew and loved him best, I know will resolve this day and all the days forward that they're going to ensure Nash knows the quality and character of his grandfather. In the Apostle Paul's letter to the church at Philippi, he invokes the peace that passeth all understanding. And what he meant by that, clearly, is that there are, for certain profound losses, certain sudden tragedies, where there ought to be no immediate peace for anyone that's endured them, that we could understand at least. And so then we might want to pray for the peace that passes understanding. So whatever our tradition today and whatever our faith, that is what we must do. For Sheila and her family, whom he called in that same speech his rock, and for all who mourn them, mourn Roger. And still, there is the assurance of the psalmist, who said, sorrow lasteth the night, but joy cometh in the morning. We know it will take much more than one night, Mr. Speaker. But we pray today that the sorrow and the loss that Sheila and her family feels, that we all feel, will soften to longing, and then to wistfulness, and then to good memory, and then even to smiles, and yes, to joy, that we got to know Roger, that we were able to work alongside him, and that they had the chance to love him and be loved by him. So to the member for Saskatoon Meewasin, Roger Parent, thank you for your example. Thank you for being a constituency man. Thank you for your hard work, your humor, and your humility, and your servant's heart.